Episode 96, 3 Tips for Managing Your Time Better with Shannon Resare.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches, the podcast where each episode is a conversation between me, Heather Rackham, and one of my amazing coach colleagues. Each coach here is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and certified through the Life Coach School. Together, we have one main goal, helping you live your best life no matter what. You ready for this conversation with the coach? Here we go.
We are all busy, and we all have many things we need and want to do in our lives. But there are only 24 hours in a day, and sometimes it just seems like there is never enough time to do all the things. Coach Shannon Resare understands the struggle many women face in their lives. She has found that doing just 3 small things in her life has helped her not get more time, but fit everything she wants to in the time she is given. She wants to share these with all of you today. So if you find yourself in a position of wanting to fit everything in and not have your life seem so frantic and out of control, give today's episode a listen.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be here today and glad to have Coach Shannon Resare with me. Shannon, hi.
Heather, I love talking to you. I love coming on the podcast.
I love talking to you. We tried to do this recording once already and a little bit of technical difficulties and a little bit of brain craziness. And so this is take 2 for us, like a couple.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. But like I said, it's always so good to talk to you. So we've had fun catching up.
It is so good. So good. All right, Shannon, we've got some good stuff to talk about today. But before we do, I would love for you to just fill people in on who you are and what you do, all those good things.
Yeah. So as Heather mentioned, I'm Shannon. I live in Centerville, Utah. I am a life coach for working moms. I've been focusing mostly on working moms, and I'm actually making a slight adjustment to that and focusing on working moms in the tech industry. And the reason I'm doing that is because I also work full time, and I've been in the tech industry for a really long time. For those of you who don't know, there's a big, hot tech hub in Utah. So I have been in leadership in that industry. I am like I said, full-time employee. I'm building my business. I have 3 little ones, 7, 4, and 2, a really cute husband. And our newest addition this week, I guess I don't know if it's an addition yet, is that we just became licensed foster parents this week. Like we got our license this week.
My gosh.
So hopefully we'll get a placement, but now we're just playing the waiting game to get a placement. So crazy, but exciting.
Because you have so much time. But the good news is I really think we're talking today about how people can have more time. So yes. We have a lot to learn from you, because I listen to you speak and I'm like, okay, I don't know how you do this.
Yeah. And I am not saying this to shoot my own horn. I'm also the primary president in my ward. Like I love primary. But here's the thing, Heather, this is like why we're talking about this, is because it seems like I have a lot on my plate. Some days it does feel overwhelming, and some days it does seem like it's overflowing. But the thing is like most of the time I don't feel like that at all. Like I am doing everything that I want to. I am enjoying it. I am happy with my life. I mean, we talked about it before. We just got back from a trip to Disneyland. Like it is such a happy and fun time in my life. And it's because I'm applying some of these very simple principles that we're going to talk about today. And just how I view time and time management has allowed me to do all of these things that truthfully 3 years ago, I would never have thought were possible for me. I just didn't think I had the time to do it. And now I'm doing everything that I wanted to.
Well, I'm so glad to hear you say that, because initially I was like, okay, I hope you're not just like coaching yourself into driving yourself mad with all of the because I think sometimes we can do that. Mistakenly, we can try to coach ourselves to feel happy about this overly crazy life that some of us may or may not think that we have. And that is not helpful at all. I think that's kind of using the coaching tools against yourself.
Totally.
And to hear you say that, yes, I am involved in all of these things and I love it. And I'm so happy. So this is the perfect example of using tools to help you live the life that you want to have, regardless of what those circumstances are around you. Circumstance, that's a good word. I don't know what it means, but it's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Like some days, like I said, some days my life does feel really chaotic, but for the most part, like a lot of it comes down to just cutting out the excess and cutting out small things that have, quite frankly, wasted my time. I mean, I remember when I was a new mom, one baby, and she was 16 months old. I can still see myself. I could still see myself in that apartment, on the couch, and just burned out and exhausted with one baby and just my job. Mm-hmm. Not to mention all of the other responsibilities that I'm doing today. And it was because of how I was thinking about my time, how I was thinking about my mothering, and how I was thinking about my job. That's what was taking my time. That's what was stealing my time for me, is those things. And it's been 3 years of coaching to help me get to this point where I see time very differently now. And I use my time very, very, very differently now. So it's not just, to your point, it's not just coaching like, oh, life is great and everything's fine and wonderful and hunky dory. It's while the coaching drowning. That is while I'm drowning. No, it's the coaching that has got me here to be able to do all of these things without drowning. Mm-hmm. And because I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. My husband and I have always wanted to do foster care. We talked about it when we were dating, that's just what we were going to do. And I truthfully didn't think that it would be possible until my kids were teenagers, until this last year. And it's like, oh, nope, this is the time. Okay, we're just going to figure out how to make it work. And we made it work because we felt a very distinct prompting from the Lord that this was the time, and it was not what we expected. But that's just kind of how I approach life. We figure out how to make it work with the time that we have.
So good. And it's what we all need to do, right? And I think to some extent, we think we're doing that. And for most of us, we are, but we're getting things done, and we're doing the things that we want to do. The problem is, are we enjoying it while we're doing it? Are we like forcing ourselves into something that we don't really like? So,
right. One of the things that I wanted to talk about today is actually not even doing the things that we don't want to do. Like, so much of our time is because we're doing things out of obligation or because we feel like we have to. And most of the time we just need to say no. And I think that's the problem that so many of us have, moms, and also especially members in the church, is being okay saying no and knowing how to do that in a way that feels good and genuine and healthy.
And as you're saying that, like, I can feel people's energy that are listening, and they're not even listening as we're recording, right? I can feel them going, oh no, I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah, because here's the thing. So some of the things that we're talking about today, ways that I've saved time, and this is ways I've saved time to be able to do everything I have without necessarily changing my routine and overhauling anything, right? It's because I understood. Actually, I should say I misunderstood some of the church teachings and principles it was taking my time. And one of the things I misunderstood has to do with saying no, because I think there's this kind of underlying belief in the church and among women and mothers in general, that if we say no, we're not being Christ-like. If we say no, we are not being kind. We're being mean. Like, I think we genuinely believe that, like, we're being mean. I can help this person. I know I can help this person. And therefore we think because I can, I should. And just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Right. And I think you could take that to another level too, because if it's coming from a leader, then you're not also being unkind, but you're being disobedient.
Oh, yes. 100%. Yes. Like, I'm being disobedient. Like, heaven forbid I ever say no to a calling because of circumstances. I'll give you an example of this. We had a wonderful bishop. He just got released. He was fantastic. We got a new bishop who's been phenomenal too, but our bishop was released. And a few years ago, in the middle of me trying to figure out my time, he pulled us in. This is when Scouts was still in the church. And he pulled my husband and I in. He said, "We'd like to call your husband to be the scoutmaster." And here we are, both working full time. My husband's working crazy hours. He was working the night shift. And I was busy. I was just getting coached. I was getting certified as a coach. And our bishop asked the most brilliant question. And I think this is the question that we as leaders in the church should be asking. He said, I want to counsel with you about that calling to see how that's going to affect your family and to see what we can do. And it was the most beautiful discussion with the bishop because it was truly a counsel. We were counseling with our leader who had extended us a calling, and he could have very well said, hey, we want you to be the scoutmaster. What do you want to do about it? But he knew of our circumstance a little bit. He didn't know everything. And he's like, I want to know if this is going to be able to work for you and your family. And we said, well, Bishop, we're willing to accept any calling. The challenge is Jake works the night shift, and he can come to Scouts on Tuesday night, but he'll have to leave early. And because he has this job and he hasn't accrued enough time off, going to Scout camp in June might be a bit of a challenge. And we counseled with the bishop through some of these things. And ultimately, we ended up saying yes to the calling. And the ward and the young men's presidency and the bishopric rallied around us so that Jake could be an influence on those young men. And I'm starting to cry because I'm thinking of a young man he particularly influenced. But it also allowed him to fulfill his calling and not feel obligated to be at things like Scout camp when he genuinely couldn't be at Scout camp, or when he had to leave young men's early. Like, that's the approach as a leadership we need to take in the church. Now, I can't affect bishops. I just had this beautiful, wonderful bishop who did this amazing thing. Yeah. But if I came into that conversation and I said that to the bishop, well, Bishop, let's counsel together about this calling and what it means for our family and what it means for the ward, that creates a different atmosphere as well. And sometimes, though, you might have to say no to a calling. You just might. It just happens.
Yeah. Well, I think that's such a great reminder, and a really, like, that doesn't seem hard, right? Like when you spoke about it that way, I didn't feel that feeling that people are going to be like, oh no. It just feels natural and right.
Yeah. So I'll give you another example of this, because saying no is good. I think we do need to say no, genuinely say no. We can talk all about that. But I think also saying yes and is okay too. Another example of this is actually a former institute teacher. She and her husband, you were young parents at the time, and he was in the young men's presidency. And then they called her in and said, we would like you to be in the young women's presidency. Now, young men and young women's are on the same night of the week. They both have young kids. And this bishop was not as forward thinking as my bishop was in our situation. And this sweet mother, this institute leader that I had years later, she said to the bishop, I'm happy to accept this calling, but here is our challenge. How can we work together to fulfill the callings that need to happen in the ward and also take care of our family? And because, who's going to stay home with these like little babies, 3 and 5 years old and whatever. And when counseling with the bishop hadn't even thought about that. He hadn't even considered their circumstances because it just wasn't on the top of his brain. He just knew there was a calling that needed to be fulfilled in the young women. And ultimately what they decided doing with the bishopric and the ward council is they released her husband from the young men's and they put her in the young women's. And I think those are the conversations. That's where revelation happens, is when we counsel together. So she didn't say no, but she said, here's what this means for our family. I understand what this means to the church. How can we work together? How can we counsel together to make a good solution for everyone? And so sometimes saying no doesn't have to be saying no. Sometimes it's, how can we make this work? Or let me give you more information on my situation.
Which I think is a really great example of really how, and you said that's revelation, right? But it's also how the brain works. If we say no to something, or if we say, just saying no closes down our brain's capacity to figure out how to make something work. So once you say, I'm open to this, your brain is more open to problem solving and coming up with solutions. Exactly. So, but if you say yes from a place of fear and trepidation without like kind of that brainstorming in the middle, I think that closes you down to it as well, right? That fear 100% from being able to brainstorm and figure out a way to make things work.
100%. The first time I heard about this idea of like, it's okay to say no was actually from Jody Moore. Don't we love Jody? Like everyone just loves Jody, but Jody is talked about, and I'm going to horribly butcher her teaching here, that she's talked about if you say yes to something out of obligation or guilt or whatever, you're going to end up resenting that person or that thing. And is that truly the feeling you want to have? And if they knew that you were going to resent them, would they want you to say yes to that thing? Would they want you to be resentful of them? And the answer is probably not. Like, so it's giving the answer that works best out of integrity. And it opens us up to problem solving and brainstorming. The other thing I think that's really helped me a lot when it comes to being open to saying no, because I was a yes person. I said yes to everything. Like, of course we say yes when a leader asks us to do something, or when it's not a leader, it's the compassionate service coordinator who says that there's been a new baby and can you, by the way, make a meal this week? I mean, that's usually where I have the hardest time because of all of the things going in my life. And for me, sometimes I do have to say no. Like, I'm really sorry. I would love to help so-and-so who's just had a baby and bring a meal. But I just can't. And often we're worried about saying no because we don't want the other person to be mad or disappointed or frustrated or put out. So like we're saying yes to save them from having a negative reaction. Mm-hmm. When in reality, like, what if it's okay that they're just mad or frustrated or disappointed? Like, my 2-year-old gets mad at me when he tries to run into the street and I grab his hand in his wrist and I'm like, no, you hold my hand in the street. Like, I have to say no there.
Yeah.
And he gets mad and he kicks and he screams and he cries, but it's actually better for him if I hold his hand. It's better for me if I hold his hand. Same thing in the church. What if it's okay if they kick and scream and cry, or in any part of our lives, not just the church? What if it's okay if they kick and scream and cry and we just have deep love and compassion for them anyways? Mm-hmm. Like, hey, compassionate service leader, I know how hard it is for you to probably try and find meals. I get it. Like, you've probably already called 10 people already, and now you're calling me and I can't help. I am so sorry. I bet you just have a really hard calling. The answer is still no, but I am so sorry. And what if it's just okay that they feel disappointed? Yeah. We don't have to control how they feel. We can just allow them to have the reaction and just be deeply compassionate for that reaction.
And I think it's also important to recognize, understanding, like when you think of them being disappointed or whatever emotion that you don't want them to experience, you experience an emotion as well, probably guilt or, yes. You experience something as well. But I think it's good to know ahead of time, okay, when this happens, this is how I'm going to experience it. I know I'm probably going to feel some guilt, initially when you're starting that practice. And so I've learned to have to say, and so that means you're going to have to allow that feeling to be there. Like, know that it's going to come, allow it to be there, but,
and I'm not a bad person. Right. I am not a bad person because I feel bad that I want to help. And I think I know I've done this, and if I've done this, I'm sure other people have too, where after I say no to something, I'll give that example of sending a meal to someone who's had a new baby or whatever, giving a meal to someone in the ward. I will feel relief for not having to do that. Mm-hmm. And then I will feel guilt for not doing the thing. And then I'll feel guilt for feeling relief. Like, oh, that's a bad feeling. I shouldn't feel relief. I should feel guilty. So then I make myself feel more guilty because I don't have the right feeling. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Aren't we fun? Aren't we so much fun? That's what I was like. Humans are just so fun.
Yeah. And what if it's okay for me to feel guilty and I don't have to change it?
Yeah.
And it's okay for me to feel relief too. I can feel those two emotions at the same time, and I don't have to change it. Mm-hmm. That's something I've actually been working on in my personal life a lot lately, is just allowing myself human reactions and not judging myself for my human reaction, and just allowing my human reaction to take place. Like, I remember, this was even a month ago, I was so angry at someone for something that they did at work. I was furious. And I'm like, they said they were going to do this and it didn't work out. And I had to go into a private room at work, and I just sat there, and it would have been very easy for me to try and coach myself out of it and help me to think better thoughts. And I shouldn't feel angry. And I just sat there and like, nope, I want to feel angry right now. I know it's a product of my thoughts. I know I'm creating my anger from my thoughts because A lot of us know the coaching skills, but that's okay. I feel angry right now, and I'm just going to let myself feel angry. And I just sat there and just felt angry. And after a while, I was like, okay, I'm done now. And then I was able to move on and figure out solutions. But I had to allow the anger without the judgment of the anger, without the judgment of whatever human emotion I had.
Yeah. Yeah. That the judgment leads to a whole lot of other spiral of which we just talked about. So, all right. So we have this, we've talked a little bit about the skill, and I do think it's a skill of learning how to say no. And it doesn't mean just like we're going to walk around saying no all the time. It means just really kind of taking a check of if it feels in alignment with this. There's probably a lot of things we're going to want to say yes to as well. But it is a skill to learn how to be able to say no when it doesn't feel like it's in alignment with what you can, with who you are and who how you want to show up in all the choices that you're making. So I think that leads me to another question is choices, right? We're always making these choices in our life. And you obviously are having to make choices in your life between how you balance your time and what you choose to do versus what you choose not to do. And I think it's paralyzing to get to the point where we don't make choices.
So this is my experience. So maybe it will resonate with someone out there, is that for a long time, I feared making a choice. And so I procrastinated the choice because I was afraid of making the wrong choice.
Mm-hmm.
I was absolutely terrified. And so a decision that could have been made and I could have started down one path could have taken me minutes, whereas I might have agonized about it for days. And it not only took up my time and it wasted time, but it also took up my mental capacity and my mental brain space. And I think that's one way that I personally was misunderstanding some of the church's teachings, is that there is a right or wrong. There's opposition in all things. There's right or wrong, or there's best, better. Wait, what is it? Good, better, best.
Good, better, and best.
And I better be choosing the best, not the good. Like we did that. Like we started doing
good
that.
Good is not good enough.
Good is not good enough. We have to choose the best, right? And so that is a beautiful talking about good, better, and best, where there are some things that are good, better, and best. But what if everything is just the best? Or what if everything is just good and there is no better and there is no best? Like, then what do you do? And I think so many of us agonize about making that decision. And sometimes they're huge. And sometimes they do require time and effort and thought and prayer and wrestling with the Lord. But a lot of things don't even need to be wrestled with. I was speaking with a woman who her situation in life has changed quite a bit. She's an empty nester. And there's that transition when you become an empty nester. Your kids have left the home. If you've been a stay-at-home mom, that is a very, very challenging transition. Mm-hmm. And this woman was facing, what do I do now with my life? I don't know my life any other way. And for over 2 years, she just did kind of the same thing every single day because she didn't want to make the wrong decision. And I would talk to her like, well, what do you even want to do? And she said, oh, well, there's this and this and this. And she had things that she wanted to do. Okay, well, why don't you go do them? Like, none of them were bad. None of them were inherently bad. It's like, you have all this time on your hands. You're essentially in retirement. You've done your job as a mom. You're great. What do you want to do? And her answer was, well, the Lord hasn't told me which one to do yet. And so for 2.5 years, she'd been waiting around for the Lord to tell her which decision was the one she should make out of all of the good and even best decisions that she had. And in that case, she'd unfortunately wasted so much time with things that she could have been doing and enjoying, but because she didn't feel like she received an answer from the Lord, she didn't make a decision. And that's where I think so many of us are wasting some of our time too, when we could just make a decision and go for it and realize, hey, it's not permanent. I can always change it later. I could change my mind. It's okay if I change my mind.
Yeah. And some people, I think this is a really interesting thing to look at, because some people feel more comfortable just making a choice. And I'm sure Heavenly Father is going to be happy with any choice that I make. If I'm making the wrong choice, he's going to let me know, kind of thing. Right. Mm-hmm. And other people really don't feel like they can move forward until they have received some sort of an answer. And I think on that end of the spectrum, I think it's good to recognize that he trusts us to make decisions.
Yeah.
And so when you're the person who really is dependent upon, and I'm not saying it's dependent or it's right or it's wrong, but when you're the kind of person who really just wants to know what he wants you to do, and I think that's coming from a good place, I think it's really good and wise of us to just realize, hey, and maybe when I'm absent of a prompting, it's because he trusts me in whatever decision I make.
Yeah. Because I mean, the reason that we're here on this earth anyways, is to learn how to choose between good and evil, and not just good and evil, but to choose between good options too. Like I have 3 options. All of them are good. How do I choose? Yeah. How do I make those decisions? My sweet husband is so incredibly wise. And a couple of months ago, I was working with a client, actually. It was a client that I was working with who was going through a moral dilemma. And I was struggling knowing how to coach this particular client and what to say and what to do so that I was in line with my integrity, my values, and also the coaching tools that I've been taught. And I prayed about it and I did the best that I could. And after I coached this client for a few weeks and I did the best I could through the situation, I felt like I had done truly the best that I could. I really felt that. But I told my husband how much I was agonizing about these sessions with this client. And my sweet, wise husband looked at me and said, genuinely and sincerely, so I hope this does not come across as trite. He's like, Shannon, you're just becoming like Heavenly Father. And I'm like, well, what do you even mean by that? Like, whatever. And I'm like rolling my eyes at him, like, whatever. What do you mean by that? He's like, no, Shannon. He's like, you are genuinely coming to understand what it's like to try and teach other people and to make other choices and how to help them best move forward in their lives. He's like, this experience is teaching you how to be like God and how God does that in his decisions that he's making that affect other people. And I hope that didn't come across as trite. And I hope that came across in a way that made sense.
Yes.
But it was so beautiful to me because he's like, no, these decisions you're making, you are becoming like God. And I was like, okay, I never thought about it like that way. And it was so sweet and so genuine, but that's what we're doing when we make these decisions, is we're learning to use our agency, which is exactly what Heavenly Father has. And that's exactly what he gave to us when we came here. And we're just learning that through making the choices between through the 3 good decisions or the 3 best decisions or whatever.
Yeah. And I think there's this piece of, we had this reliance on our heavenly parents, which is beautiful. And I know that when I am relying on them, I am more confident in making my decisions, but sometimes we have to be careful because it takes us away a little bit from trusting ourselves. And I think about, this client that you were talking about who hadn't done anything for 2 years. We got to her core. She probably really had some self-trust issues. She didn't trust herself to be able to make decisions. So she was just waiting for somebody else to make it for her. And I mean, of course, that's the best source to go to is our heavenly parents, but it really is, he wants us to learn to trust ourselves. He wants us to learn to listen to our instincts and follow our intuition. And there's a lot to be said for learning to trust ourselves.
Yeah. Like, you are 100% right. It was a lot of the self-trust issues and a lot of fear of, what if I'm wrong? Like, we'll waste so much time. We'll take so much time trying to make the right decision or do the right thing up front or do the best thing up front because we think if we're wrong, we're going to waste time or we're going to be a bad person if we're wrong. But like, what if it's okay if we're wrong? I see this a lot in my work. So I work full time and, but I always have gotten my work done early. So people who are doing the exact same role as me, it might take them 40 hours to do their job. And here I am sitting there like, it took me 20 hours this week to get everything done. And by the way, my results are better than yours. And a lot of it has come down to, I take the information and I just make the best decision possible and move forward. And I recognize that I can always change it later if I need to. and I can change it quickly if I need to. There's a principle in tech. This is one of my very favorite principles. This is a little bit more technical, but the way that software is developed is through an agile, we'll call it an agile methodology. There's a whole thing we can get into, but the way that software is developed is the developers will iterate. Is they'll put out there a product that's C+ work. They'll put out a product that's like, hey, this is okay. It's average. It's fine. It's great. And then on the next round, we're going to iterate and we're going to make this product better. And so this next round, and it's usually right back to back, like they'll work on something for 2 weeks, they'll deliver it and it's just okay. And then the next 2 weeks, they'll work on something and they make it a little bit better. And then the next 2 weeks, they work on something and they make it a little bit better. And at anywhere along the line, if anything is wrong or bad, they can correct it because they're just starting out with the bare minimum. And so this principle of iterating I love the concept. I love it so beautiful because it doesn't mean that I have to make the right and perfect decision up front. It's like, oh, I'm just going to make an okay decision now. And then I'm just going to get a little bit better with that decision as I go along. I love that concept in software.
Yeah, it feels so freeing to think about doing something that way.
Yeah, I've been listening a lot to Corinne Crabtree, and Corinne.
Yes.
For those in the audience that are listening, if you don't know Corinne, she's fantastic. She's a weight loss coach in our community, but she has a mouth on her. So be very prepared. And if you go look her up, she's great, but you're gonna get a little bit of mouth.
And when she says in our community, Shannon's not meaning like our Latter-day Saint life coach directory.
Yes. No, sorry, like our coaching.
This is like bigger world picture of coaching. Yeah, Corinne.
Coaching community. Yes, thanks. So I'm glad you clarified that. So she teaches weight loss, and that is exactly how she approaches weight loss. Because a lot of people come to her and tell me, okay, tell me the prescription for how to lose weight. Exactly how much do I eat? And exactly what do I eat? And exactly when do I eat? And she talks about it as, well, experiment today. Like, why don't you try eating at this time? And if it doesn't work, try a different time tomorrow. And then a different time the next day. And try a different thing the next day after that. And she's like, the more you experiment, the better you're going to get and you're going to figure it out. So she allows the room for experimentation and iterating in her client's weight loss journey. And so, I mean, you can do it with weight loss. You can do it with anything in our lives. It's just this idea that whatever decision you make right now does not have to be permanent. You can iterate, you can experiment, and you can just make it a little bit better every day. And it's not the end all be all. It's like, oh, if you overate today, you're always going to be 100 pounds overweight. That's not what Corinne teaches. She's like, oh, you overate today. Well, okay, well, why did we do that? Okay, well, let's start again tomorrow. Let's see what can be different tomorrow.
Yeah. All right. So I'm sitting here thinking about all the things that you do in a day. And I don't even know what they are, but I can imagine what they are between your job and your kids and your calling and, your own private business, your coaching practice. And I'm certain there are and maybe these things that we've talked about today are like the tools and tricks that you use to consolidate and create more time for you in a day. Because it sounds to me like you have figured out how to create more time for yourself. It's like the magical thing that we all want. Do you have any tips for us in the best ways to create more time?
Yeah. First thing, it's like the verbiage that we use. Like, we don't have enough time, or I have to create more time. And that took me a lot of coaching, years and hours of getting coached, to realize that I don't need more time. I just need to better use the time that I have. So the better question is, rather than trying to figure out how to create more time, it's like, okay, how can I better and more effectively use the time that I have? And start getting in that mindset. Like, how can I use this time effectively? One thing we've talked about is learning when to say no.
Right.
Another thing we just talked about too is being able to make quick decisions and realizing like nothing is good or better or best necessarily. Yes. Sometimes it isn't. If it is, it's obvious. And that I can iterate as I go. I think the other thing too, this is really a key thing for me. It makes all of the difference. I notice it mostly in my work, but I also notice it with my kids, is asking myself, even for just 20 seconds, what is the result that I am going for here? Like, what is the result that I am trying to get with this thing? And I want to give an example of this. So when I was first married, I had my baby, and it was back at that time when I was so exhausted with just one baby.
Mm-hmm.
I was 32 when I got married, 33, and I had my first baby. And in the Latter-day Saint community, in the Utah Latter-day Saint community, I should say, 32 was so old. And
you were like a spinster.
I was, and most people had given up hope on me. Like my entire family, and I'm talking like my extended family of like dozens of people, had all of the women except for my mother and I had been married by the time they were about 21. And so for me to be 32 and not married was completely unheard of. And so by the time I got married and I had my baby, I was so excited and so grateful. And I wanted to experience every aspect of being a mother for the best reasons. Like, I just wanted to experience everything, the joy, everything. And one of the things I was really excited about was making her birthday cake. And like the Pinterest worthy birthday cakes, right? I was so excited.
I'm exhausted already thinking about that.
Because you are an experienced mom and you know what I'm talking about. But I was so excited to have the perfect smash cake for her birthday, like her first birthday. I was so excited for all of those things. And for 3 years in a row, I failed miserably. I'm like, and I'm not just talking like little failure. I'm talking like the cake looked like it had been dropped on the floor 3 times failure. Like every year I would spend hours working on this birthday cake, trying to get it to look beautiful and Pinterest worthy and Instagram worthy, and trying to make it so gorgeous. And every year I felt disappointed. I would lose sleep because I'd be staying up late at night to make this birthday cake in time for the family to come over and have this birthday party. And until at one point, like my husband's like, why don't we just buy the cake? Like then you'd relieve stress, right? But I had to step back because I'm like, okay, well, what is it I'm trying to accomplish? One of the things, like, of course, it's to get the birthday cake. But the second thing that I really wanted to get out of it that was causing all this time wasting was I really just wanted to have this beautiful experience of feeling love for my daughter and making something for her out of love and just enjoying it. Mm-hmm. And she didn't care. She was 1, 2, 3, whatever. She didn't care. And I knew that. I knew she didn't care, but I wanted to do it because I loved her so much. And I wanted to have this experience of love. So when I stepped back to realize, like, okay, number one, I need a birthday cake. But number two is I want this glorious experience. It opened myself up to more creativity to say, okay, how can I get these 2 results? How can I accomplish these 2 things in a different way that's less stressful? Needless to say, we buy the birthday cake. But the same way that I get this beautiful, wonderful experience is that it's become like a big event for me to take whosever's birthday it is, for me to take them to the store, just us. We go look at the catalog of cakes in the store, which are super overpriced and expensive. But hey, you know what? A $30 cake, totally fine, right?
Totally
I'll pay the $30
saving you hours.
Hours of time. And they get to go and they get to pick out this birthday cake. And then they get the excitement of, I can't wait for this birthday cake to be done for my birthday party next week. And then I get to watch them have the excitement of telling their friends and their teachers of, I am going to have an Ariel birthday cake. Ariel is going to be on my birthday cake. And the time it takes from the time we leave our house to pick out the cake to come home, that whole time is 30 minutes. So I've saved 2.5, 3 hours of time.
Or
because
more.
I asked myself, or more,
yes.
Because I asked myself a simple question, like, how can I achieve the results I want? One, getting the birthday cake. Well, that's simple, but how can I get the experience that I want to? Mm-hmm. And so now it's a wonderful experience for us every year. And it solves the exact thing that I was looking for when I was trying to make her birthday cake. The problem is most of us just don't even take the time to ask ourselves that question. Mm-hmm. Like, what is the result that we really want out of this? Like, what is it that we're trying to get? You know, for some people, the Instagram and Pinterest worthy birthday cake could be like, I just want people to see how amazing and wonderful I am. Mm-hmm. And that to solve that problem is different than what I needed to solve my birthday cake problem. Right. But knowing what the true thing you're trying to solve is can save so much time because you can open yourself up to creativity and like, what's another way I can solve this?
So good. So it's making quick decisions. It's learning to say no, and it's asking the question why.
Yeah. Why? What do I want out of this? What's my result? Yeah. And
so
that's
easy.
That's how I can do all of the things that I can do. Like why, like, I mean, even just simple things on a daily basis. Like, what is it that I want to achieve with my daughter when I'm sitting down to do homework with her? Is it really to check off the box that we did the darn homework and that she did her 20 minutes of reading a day? Some days, yeah, that's all I want to get out of it. So I just want her to check off the box that she did her 20 minutes of reading. But sometimes it's like, oh no, I want to sit down with her and I want to make sure that she understands what she's reading today. And that's a whole different experience than just trying to check a box.
Yeah. So good. And those are just simple questions and like 3 simple things that really make a huge difference. So I'm so grateful that you've shared those with us today. I know that there's people that are going to want to find more of you. So can you please share with us where we can find you, where they can find you?
So the best place is Instagram. So Shannon Resare coaching at Instagram. And I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes and everything. So it'll be there because my last name is spelled a little bit differently. And then also something I'm creating actually just in time for this podcast, a brand new freebie for the listeners, but also specifically for working moms in the tech community about how you can save an hour a day with just some of these simple principles that I've talked about. And so that's going to be available. I'll share the link as well. Those will be in the show notes. You can also get them from my Instagram page. Even though it's going to say it's for tech moms, I promise anybody can do this.
Yes.
They're just simple things you can make without having to overhaul your whole schedule.
Well, let me just say that I'm pretty sure we all have to be tech moms in the world we live in today, right?
so true.
We might not work in the tech field, but we sit in our kitchens with our kids and are like figuring out the technology, or they're figuring it out for us is what I should say.
So true.
If you're my age, which many of you are obviously lots younger than me, but anyway, thank you so much. This has been such a helpful conversation and I'm excited to implement these in my life as well. So thanks, Shannon.
Thanks, Heather.
Hey, we just wanted to thank you for spending part of your day here with us at Latter-day Life Coaches and being part of this conversation. Share this with your friends so that you can have a conversation with them on this topic as well. And as always, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a good one, my friends.